Welcome back to the US, Mark. I know you've been in the UK for a few days. I also noticed that you were having a bit of a public Twitter spat with none other than Dulles Airport.
America has, in fact, Washington has one of the best airports in the world, and that is DCA, Reagan Airport. It also has one of the worst airports in the world, in my opinion, which is Washington Dulles. Maybe it's my bad luck, but every time I go there, something is wrong. The air bridge wasn't working to get off the plane. It got onto one of those weird vehicles that looks like it should be on the moon that takes you from the satellite terminal to the main terminal.
Yeah.
That took 15 minutes to turn up. And this isn't Dulles Airport's fault, but then the queues, the lines, I should say, for immigration were 2 hours long. So all in all, wasn't very good. But credit to where it's due, Dulles Airport did tweet me back with profound apologies. So thanks, Dulles. But get your airport in order, please. Rant over.
Brilliant. Thank God.
Hello, I'm Mark Stone, and it is Wednesday, the 4th of June, and we're on day 135 of Trump's second term.
I'm Martha Kelner, and with billionaire Elon Musk leaving his role at Doge, he's now letting loose in his criticism of one of Donald Trump's key bills, which is making its way through Congress at the moment.
And we have some reaction from both Israel and Hamas to our interview at the start of the week with Matthew Miller, Biden's State Department spokesman, who told us that he thinks Israel has committed war crimes in Gaza.
But first, some big news on the tariffs front. Donald Trump has just signed an increase in steel and aluminium tariffs from 25% to 50%. That will go into effect after midnight tonight. But there is an exception, and it's for the United Kingdom, which remains at 25% on imports until at least July 9th.
Yeah, this was the confirmation of an announcement that Donald Trump made on Friday night in Pennsylvania, where he said that these tariffs were going to go up from 25 to 50%. It went down very well, clearly, among the steel workers in Pennsylvania that he was talking to, but very badly with the rest of the world. It is good news, as you say, for the UK, bad news for everyone else. I was having conversations over the weekend with British sources who were telling me that they were sure that Trump's new tariffs on steel would not apply to the UK. It was one of those
Right.
things, Martha, where you're not quite sure whether your sources are right. You're hoping they are.
Yeah.
And thankfully, well, they were right. We have had a statement through
Mhm.
from the UK government, from a spokesman. It reads, the UK was the first country to secure a trade deal with the US earlier this month, and we remain committed to protecting British business and jobs across key sectors, including steel, as part of our plan for change. And it goes on, we're pleased that as a result of our agreement with the US, UK steel will not be subject to these additional tariffs. We will continue to work with the US to implement our agreement, which will see the 25% US tariffs on steel removed.
And that 25% is still pretty crippling for the UK steel industry. The Director General of UK Steel has said in the past that Donald Trump has taken a sledgehammer to free trade with these
Mhm.
25% tariffs, remarking that it will not only hinder British exports to the US, but also add a lot of further import pressure to the UK market. The question as well is, what effect will it have here in the US to average normal people? From what I'm hearing, many importers will pass those price increases on to consumers. That's generally what happens. And it's likely to affect the cost of things like canned goods, so soup, beers, sodas, but also those big ticket items like cars, obviously, and household appliances. Of course, this all takes place against the backdrop of these legal battles as to whether Donald Trump's tariffs are even legal at all and do they have any staying power. So we're watching that as well as watching the impact that these tariffs are starting to have.
Yeah, and I guess it is also worth saying, as always, that Trump is about as unpredictable as they come. So it
Yeah.
could well be the case that down the line he changes his mind on those tariffs, he brings them back down again, or indeed decides that the UK deal isn't worth the paper it's written on, and never implements it, because that's a key. And actually, it was asked in the news
Yeah.
conference at the White House today. A US reporter did ask, when is the deal actually with the UK actually going to be signed? Caroline Levitt didn't have an answer, but I'm told that the answer is soon. So we'll see. It was interesting, incidentally, Martha, that the signing of these steel tariffs happened off camera, which does seem to
Mhm.
be a theme of late, because
Yeah.
there was a time, wasn't there, where you couldn't escape Trump's on camera appearances, his lengthy, wide ranging TV moments. But it does seem that that's tailed off a bit for now.
Yeah, it has tailed off. In fact, this is the first 4-day stretch, I'm told, in Donald Trump's second term that he's gone without on camera public remarks or taking questions from the press. You know, we saw this strategy of flooding the zone. He
Mm.
spoke more than any other president has in history, but perhaps he's getting a bit tired. You know, he is an elderly man, don't forget.
Credit where it's due. Donald Trump has a huge amount of energy, but maybe he is just slowing down a little for now because he'll feel that he's, domestically doing very well. He's implementing what he wants to implement. I have to say, we're not talking about it much today, but I think in the global arena, those three big challenges: Ukraine, Gaza, Iran. He doesn't seem to be having much luck on any of those at the moment. But yeah, you're right. It is a change of pace for him for now. We do have a bit of an idea of what he's up to for the rest of the week. Tomorrow, Wednesday, in the evening, he's hosting a big party on the White House South Lawn for 3,000 members of his administration. Separately, we're expecting him to have a phone call with China's President Xi Jinping at some point. That will be absolutely key, but we don't have any
Mhm.
more detail on when that will happen just yet. What we do know, and I guess this is the spectacle for the week ahead, is that on Thursday, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is in the Oval Office. And so we will have another Oval Office moment. I'm not sure quite yet how it will play out. I imagine, given that, Germany is such a key part of the Eurozone and the EU, that he'll want to have a few words with Donald Trump about tariffs.
Mhm.
Will it be another testy exchange? We'll see.
It certainly has the potential to be very tense. We obviously recall the ambush of South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa last month, that diplomatic disaster with President Zelensky 3 months ago. We know Trump to be repeatedly and fiercely critical of Europe, how much they're spending on their own defense, the trade deficits that he says that they exploit. So the Germans, you'd have to imagine, will be planning for some form of ambush, some type of Trump surprise later this week.
I was going to say, I wonder whether world leaders and their advisors they actually sit down and watch each event,
I'm sure.
watch it back, and
Mhm.
actually critique what did X leader or Y leader do wrong or do right, and what should
Yeah.
we be doing? Because it is an art, it's an art to
Mhm.
to get
Mhm.
through those moments, uh, to um, to compliment Donald Trump in the in the right way and at the right
Mhm.
point, to criticize him where you think you can. In those live TV moments, it's delicate. Some leaders have certainly done it better than others.
I'm intrigued to see whether the Germans will think about bringing a gift too. Is that something they'll be discussing?
Yeah, I think we've had a bit of briefing from Berlin, from our colleagues over there, that there is due to be a gift of some description. They won't tell us what it is, naturally. But I wondered whether it might be a piece of the Berlin Wall. I don't know.
Mhm.
There are bits of the Berlin Wall. I was in London at the weekend at the Imperial War Museum with my 11-year-old son, and there was a massive bit of the Berlin Wall there, which is what made me think about maybe that's what they might give as a present. There are pieces of the Berlin Wall all around the world now because it was such a huge and divisive, dividing line between East and West. And I don't know whether there is a piece in the White House, but maybe that might be
Mhm.
quite an apt present for him to give. After all, Trump admires Ronald Reagan, and it was Ronald
Mhm.
Reagan who said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall."
He likes a wall as well, so that works.
he certainly does. Very good, Martha. He certainly does. So that will. I think we should pick up the phone to Berlin now and tell them that's what they should do.
So last week ended with Elon Musk's apparent swan song in the Oval Office, a moment with the president which marked the end of his time as a special government employee. It was the spectacle that we've come to expect from them as a duo. The parting gift from the president to the world's richest man was a golden key, perhaps a key to the White House. He was talking about how he would always accept counsel from Musk.
There were loads of warm words. There were
Yeah.
lots of very trivial questions from the media. I was kind of a bit frustrated because there were questions I think should have been asked that were not. But have a listen to Trump praising Elon Musk.
Elon has worked tirelessly helping lead the most sweeping and consequential government reform program in generations.
It certainly was the end of a chapter for the Trump administration, the end of this wild slash and burn approach by Musk that he took to parts of the federal government. He does, though, leave frustrated at the obstacles he faces to his chainsaw of bureaucracy.
And I think that frustration has come to the fore today with this very public, very vivid criticism of the president's key sweeping budget bill, which is currently making its way through Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Trump's one big, beautiful bill. You don't get a more Trump-inspired name than that, do you? One big, beautiful bill. But that's kind of what it is, because it is, well, he
Mhm.
thinks it's beautiful. It's certainly big because it encapsulates, so it sort of gathers together so much. It is a proposed piece of legislation that aims to extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts and boost funding for border and defense priorities, as well as making cuts to spending on social safety net programs like Medicaid and food aid. Now, this bill has already been through the lower house of
Mhm.
Congress. That's the House of Representatives. It did that a couple of weeks ago. It passed with a small majority. Now it's being considered by the upper house, by the Senate.
Yeah, and Musk's criticism of this bill isn't new. He said before he was disappointed in it, but this is a ratcheting up of his feelings today, clearly pretty exasperated. He wrote on X, "I'm sorry," he wrote, "but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Tell us what you really think." He
Yeah.
went on to say, "Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Yeah, I mean, you can't get clearer than that, can you? I mean, his problem is that he is all about trying to lower the country's debt, and he believes that this will in fact increase the debt of the country. So
Mhm.
he really doesn't like it at all. In the White House press briefing, Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, she said of his criticism, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on the bill. It doesn't change his opinion. It's one big, beautiful bill. So there you go.
Now, Mark, I just want to reflect on an interview which you did with former State Department spokesman Matt Miller at the start of the week. That was an episode which was published on Monday. For listeners who haven't heard it yet, do go back and listen. He's a man that you and other journalists sparred with a lot when he was at the podium during the Biden administration.
Yeah.
The most fascinating thing that came out from that interview was hearing him acknowledge, this is what he said, that Israel had, in his opinion, committed war crimes.
Yeah, it was a remarkable, stark, shocking statement. To be honest, I hadn't
Mhm.
expected him to be so upfront. And it's an interview and words and an opinion that he is now revealing that has made waves. A lot of people very angry, saying that
Mhm.
he's now admitting what he wouldn't admit at the podium, and that some saying that makes him complicit. Candid is maybe the wrong word, but he certainly was, as I say, upfront. Without a doubt, he said, war crimes have been committed by Israel. That is in
Mhm.
stark contrast to what he said in office. He also said, and I thought this was interesting, that whether the state of Israel has conspired to commit war crimes is an open question. Now, that is remarkable from a former State Department official of the United States government to say that it is an open question whether the Israeli state is committing war crimes.
Really remarkable. And I think that's why it's raised so many eyebrows. You've had reaction to this interview today from Hamas.
Yeah, unsolicited by us, incidentally,
Mhm.
but they did release a statement Tuesday morning. They clearly saw the interview, and in their statement, they say that it amounts to a significant admission that condemns the occupation and exposes its crimes. And they went on to say that it showed that
Right.
Miller was, quote, not allowed to speak the truth while he was in office and forced to adhere to the US government's official narrative regarding the occupation's practices. This exposes the deep political complicity of US administrations with the occupation and their criminal cover up of its brutal violations. So, very strong words there from Hamas, of course, a proscribed terror group in the eyes of the United States, the
Mhm.
UK, and many other countries as well. We did put the words from the interview to the Israelis. Here's David Mensa, the spokesman for the Israeli government.
Of course, when there are claims like that, they need to be fairly investigated. But I can tell you that Israel upholds the highest levels of international law. It is key to the IDF strategy in releasing our hostages and destroying this terrorist organization.
Now, the thing is there, he says, if these claims have been made, then we need to fairly investigate them. Well, the point is that, Martha,
Mhm.
is precisely
Yeah.
Matt Miller's point, that these claims are not
Mhm.
investigated. And that was the other thing that struck me in his interview. He was admitting now what we were asking him repeatedly during his
Mhm.
time in office. He was at the podium. He was saying, look, we're concerned about this, we're
Mhm.
concerned about that. We've asked Israel to investigate.
Mhm.
And me and others were saying, but then the investigations never come to any conclusion. Now he's admitting,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's true. They didn't ever come to any conclusions.
Yeah, a newsmaking interview, Mark, and we should say we're very keen to have more newsmaking interviews on Trump 100. So please do email us on trump100@sky.uk. Before we go, we've got a quick update on the story of Daisy Vargas and her 4-year-old daughter, who we called Sophia, not her actual name, but she's receiving treatment for short bowel syndrome at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. It's a rare and debilitating condition. And you may remember from one of last week's podcasts that their family, the Vargas family, had been threatened with deportation by the Trump administration. They had repeated letters from the Department of Homeland Security ordering them to leave the US. But Daisy's daughter is reliant on the care she's receiving here in LA to live. And her lawyers and doctors were urging the Department of Homeland Security to allow her to stay in the US to continue receiving this life-saving care. Her doctors saying that if she was deported to Mexico, which is her home country, she could die within a matter of days because the care that she's getting just isn't available in the same way outside the US. Well, some good news today for the family. This morning, Daisy, the mother, received an approval notice for humanitarian parole for 1 year. So they can remain for at least one more year in the US while she receives that medical care.
So maybe it was an administrative error. These letters that were sent out, just blanket letters, and they
Mhm.
appear in this case at least to have found out that it shouldn't have been sent. She can stay. I wonder what difference the media pressure, like your report and others, had to do with this
Mhm.
decision.
I think they played a very smart game, the lawyers and the doctors for the family, by making this such a public case. But it does show that there is some flex in the Trump immigration policy.
Well, that is it for this episode of Trump 100. As always, you can get in touch with us, trump100@sky.uk. We are, I think, doing another Q&A episode this weekend. So send in your questions. And I think it's David Blevins and I are going to do our very best to answer them.
Brilliant. And if you're not already, you can follow the podcast wherever you're listening. And why not write us a review too? We'll be back tomorrow for another day of Trump 100.